When people think of Nintendo today, they think of Mario leaping across screens, Zelda's vast kingdoms, Pokémon traded in schoolyards and consoles that feel more playful than powerful. What they often miss is that Nintendo is not a technology company in the way Sony or Microsoft are. It is a play company, one that has survived for more than a century by understanding something far more enduring than processing power: how humans find joy, challenge, and meaning through play. Nintendo's journey from handmade playing cards to global gaming dominance is not a straight line of innovation, but a long meditation on restraint, reinvention, and the courage to ignore the industry's loudest assumptions. Nintendo was founded in 1889 in Kyoto, Japan, long before video games, electronics, or even mass entertainment existed. Its original business was Hanafuda, playing cards, a niche product tied to Japanese culture and social rituals. From the beginning, Nintendo learned a lesson that would echo across its entire history. Entertainment is inseparable from context. Cards were not just objects. They were excuses for people to gather, compete, and share time. Nintendo was never selling paper. It was selling structured play. For decades, Nintendo experimented restlessly. It moved into toys, taxis, love hotels, instant rice, and other ventures that failed or stagnated. These failures are often treated as curiosities, but they were formative. Nintendo learned that it did not excel at logistics, commodities, or services. It excelled when it could design experiences governed by simple rules that produced delight. This clarity mattered enormously when Nintendo entered electronics in the 1970s. Unlike companies driven by engineering ambition, Nintendo entered gaming reluctantly, pragmatically, and with humility. It did not aim to build the most powerful machines. It aimed to build toys that happened to use electronics. The first great proof of this philosophy was the Nintendo Entertainment System in the 1980s. At a time when the video game industry was collapsing under low-quality content and lost consumer trust, Nintendo imposed strict control. Games were curated, hardware was locked down, developers were regulated. Critics accused Nintendo of being authoritarian, but the effect was restorative. Nintendo re-established trust by treating games as products that needed standards, not experiments dumped onto shelves. Quality became identity. Fun became non-negotiable. Characters like Mario emerged not as mascots, but as interfaces. Mario's movement taught players how the game worked without tutorials. Jumping, running, timing, failure, and mastery were communicated through feel rather than instruction. This design ethos became Nintendo's signature. Games were not just challenging, they were legible. Players learned by doing. This approach made Nintendo's games accessible to children while remaining deep enough for experts. Difficulty was not removed, it was paced. As technology advanced, Nintendo repeatedly faced moments where it could have chased power and realism like its competitors. Repeatedly, it refused. When Sony and Microsoft emphasized graphics storage and cinematic experiences, Nintendo emphasized interaction. The Wii was the most dramatic example. Motion controls looked primitive to hardcore gamers, but they invited entire families into play. Bowling, tennis, and fitness became social rituals. Nintendo expanded the definition of a gamer not by marketing, but by design. It asked a different question. Not how real can this look, but who can this include? This contrarian instinct often looked like weakness in the short term. Nintendo consoles lagged in raw specifications. Third-party developers sometimes left. Analysts declared Nintendo obsolete more than once. Yet Nintendo endured because its value did not depend on industry consensus. It depended on first-party worlds built over decades. Mario, Zelda, Pokémon, and Animal Crossing were not franchises in the Hollywood sense. They were playgrounds refined across generations. Each iteration respected muscle memory, emotional attachment, and player identity. Change was evolutionary, not disruptive. One of Nintendo's most underappreciated strengths is its willingness to walk away from success. The Wii was wildly popular, yet Nintendo did not simply iterate it endlessly. The Wii U failed publicly and painfully. But failure did not provoke panic. It provoked reflection. The Nintendo Switch emerged as a synthesis, handheld and console, personal and social, simple and deep. It was not the most powerful machine on the market. It was the most considered. It aligned hardware form with Nintendo's core belief that play should fit naturally into life, not demand a dedicated space or identity. Throughout this evolution, Nintendo remained culturally distinct. Its leadership prized intuition over data, obsession, internal creativity over market research, and long-term brand trust over quarterly dominance. Decisions were often made by game designers rather than executives. This inverted hierarchy protected play from being optimized into boredom. Nintendo understood that once fun is measured too aggressively, it disappears. And it is exactly here that the deeper question of Nintendo's rise from playing cards to gaming dominance begins to surface. Because once a company has shaped how entire generations understand play, childhood, and imagination, the challenge is no longer how to innovate, but how to steward that influence responsibly in a world of digital addiction, endless content, and attention engineered for compulsion rather than joy. And that unresolved tension is the unfinished thought we must now carry forward into the next part. And when this unresolved tension is carried into the modern age, Nintendo's century-long history begins to look less like a business story and more like an ethical position, because in a world where entertainment is increasingly optimized to capture attention indefinitely, Nintendo stands almost alone in designing for completion, rest, and return, rather than compulsion. The company that once sold playing cards for social gatherings now finds itself navigating an industry dominated by monetization loops, live services, and psychological hooks engineered to keep players engaged, not because they are happy, but because they are unable to stop. Nintendo's difference becomes clearest when placed next to its competitors. Modern gaming ecosystems are built around metrics, daily active users, retention curves, microtransaction conversion, endless progression systems. These games are not designed to end, they are designed to persist. Nintendo has largely rejected this model. Its games still have endings. Stories resolve. Worlds can be put down and revisited later without penalty. This is not nostalgia, it is philosophy. Nintendo understands that play loses its magic when it becomes obligation, and that joy cannot be infinite without becoming noise. This philosophy extends into how Nintendo treats its players, especially children. While other companies aggressively monetize younger audiences through skins, loot boxes, and psychological scarcity, Nintendo remains cautious to the point of frustration. Online services are limited. Monetization is conservative. Parental controls are emphasized. Nintendo is often criticized for being behind the times, but this critique misunderstands the trade-off Nintendo has chosen. It is willing to lose short-term revenue in order to protect long-term trust. Trust for Nintendo is the most valuable currency because once parents believe a company respects childhood, that belief can last generations. The design of Nintendo's games reinforces this trust structurally. Difficulty is present, but it is rarely punitive. Failure teaches rather than humiliates. Mechanics are introduced gradually, allowing mastery to feel earned. Even in competitive games, balance is prioritized over dominance. Nintendo's designers often speak about smiles per minute, an informal but revealing metric. The goal is not maximum engagement, but sustained delight. This stands in sharp contrast to systems optimized for addiction, where frustration is often used to drive spending or time investment. Hardware, too, reflects this stance. The Switch succeeded not because it was technologically superior, but because it respected how people actually live. It could be picked up, put down, shared, and carried. It did not demand a lifestyle. It fit into one. This humility is rare in technology design. Most devices ask users to adapt to them. Nintendo adapts to users. This inversion is why Nintendo often appears out of step with industry trends while remaining culturally central. Yet, Nintendo's position is not without risk. As digital ecosystems grow more aggressive and immersive, restraint can look like irrelevance. Younger audiences raised on infinite content may find Nintendo's boundaries limiting. The temptation to adopt more exploitative models will never disappear. Nintendo's challenge is to evolve without surrendering the values that make it distinct. It must find ways to integrate online play community and persistence without turning play into labor or joy into habit. What gives Nintendo a chance is its history of walking away from dominance rather than clinging to it. Time and again, Nintendo has abandoned successful formulas when they began to constrain creativity. This willingness to reset, to accept temporary failure in service of long-term integrity is rare. It reflects a company that measures success not only in units sold, but in cultural impact. Nintendo does not ask whether players stayed forever. It asks whether they remember fondly. In this sense, Nintendo's true legacy is not Mario, Zelda, or Pokémon as intellectual property, but play as a human practice. Nintendo has consistently argued through design, rather than rhetoric, that play is not about escape from life, but engagement with it. It trains patience, curiosity, coordination, and empathy. It creates shared memories rather than isolated consumption. These qualities are increasingly endangered in a digital economy that rewards isolation and intensity. The unresolved tension, then, is not whether Nintendo can keep up with technology, but whether the world will continue to value what Nintendo protects. If the future of entertainment is defined entirely by attention, capture Nintendo's model becomes radical resistance. If the future leaves room for joy, that ends stories that resolve, and games that can be set aside without guilt, Nintendo remains essential. In the end, Nintendo's journey from playing cards to global gaming dominance teaches a quiet but profound lesson. Progress in entertainment is not measured by how long you can keep someone playing, but by how well you honor the time they give you. Nintendo built its empire by respecting that time, shaping it into moments of challenge, laughter, and shared meaning, then letting it go. As long as humanity needs play that nourishes rather than consumes, Nintendo's century-old intuition will continue to matter, not because it is modern, but because it is deeply human.